Hi everyone, so let's go ahead and let's work on simplifying radicals or simplifying square roots. Let's go ahead and get started. So in example 1, they are asking us to simplify the radical, or otherwise known as the square root. Now, the first thing we need to make a note of is the fact that the square root operation, square root of x, is the opposite of the operation which says x squared, which means that these two will cancel each other out if you have them together. So if I have x squared and the square root of x like so, these two operations will cancel out, and I am simply left with just my number or just my variable. So in order to simplify this square root, what I'm looking for are pairs. I'm looking for factors that are doubled. So to go ahead and get started, the first thing I want to do, of course, is to factor 45. Now, it doesn't really matter which factor you use. We're going to end up in the same place. So 45, I'm going to go ahead and choose to factor it with 9 and 5. Those are just the two factors that come to my head first. And then I can go ahead and continue to factor 9 because, again, I'm looking for pairs. And if I take a look at 9 and 5, these are not a pair at all. So I continue to factor to see if I have any pairs, which in this case I do. I have a pair of 3s. So what this actually looks like, because keep in mind, I still have technically a factor of 5 as well. The square root of 45 is actually, if I expand it with all of its factors, looks like this. 3 squared times 5. And again, like I mentioned earlier, because the square operation cancels out with the square root, this 3 squared is now allowed to come outside of the square root. And so I can rewrite this as 3, and because 5 does not get paired up with anything else, it stays inside the square root. So my final answer when simplifying is 3 times the square root of 5 is equal to the square root of 45. All right. So here is an example. Go ahead and pause the video. See if you can give this a try on your own. All right, let's go ahead and check over your answers. One thing I would like to point out in this particular problem is that I do have multiple 2s. I have a pair of 2s that came from the 4, and I also have a third 2 that came from the 8. But keep in mind that I am only looking for pairs. So this 2 along with this 3, that's also a factor, remain inside the square root. And because these are technically all factors, I need to multiply them back together. And so my final answer becomes 2 times the square root of 6. Let's go ahead and move on to example 2. There's something that's a little bit different with this simplification that I would like to show you. Now, looking at the square root of 128, some of the factors might not necessarily come to you right away. But I do know for a fact that 128 is divisible by 2. So that will probably be my first factor. And then you could just divide 128 by 2 in a calculator. And the factor that 2 pairs up with is 64. Now we can go ahead and simplify 64 into 8 and 8. Apologies, I meant factor. And technically I could stop here because I already have a pair. But I would like to continue on because I would like to, like I said, show you something else. So my 8s will continue to factor into 4 and 2. And then my 4s, of course, will continue to factor into 2 and 2. All right, now I have a lot of factors and it can be a little bit confusing to see which ones are my factors. The key to this is the ends of each of these branches. So if I follow a branch and I reach the end of that branch, I have a factor. So here's a factor of 2. Here's another one. Following this down, oh, there's another one right here. We have a couple 2's here and 2's right over here. So lots of 2's. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pair up our 2's. So I have a pair of 2's here, another pair of 2's right there, and last but not least, my final pair of 2. And my single 2 that's kind of off over here on the left side is unfortunately alone, but that's okay. So rewriting this, I get that the square root of 128 is technically the same thing as 2 squared times 2 squared times another 2 squared times my final singular 2. Right? And this is equal to, all of those pairs come out, so I actually get 2 times 2 times 2 times the square root of that singular 2. So what I wanted you to notice here is that if I have multiple pairs, even if they are all different numbers, because that could be the case as well, all the numbers that come outside also get multiplied, because again, keep in mind that originally to divide or factor these out, I had to divide. So now if I'm trying to put the numbers back together, I need to multiply. So that's what we're doing here. So 2 times 2 times 2 gives us 8 times the square root of 2. And that is the square root of 128 simplified. All right, go ahead and if you would please pause the video here. See if you can give this one a try. Alrighty, go ahead and if you would please double check over your answers. Again, here I did end up with 2 different pairs of numbers. And so when they came out of the square root, I multiplied them together to get 6 on the outside of the square root. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's actually use the simplification in a problem. So in this particular example, they're asking us to solve for x, and they want us to give them an exact answer. So with an exact answer, we need to make sure that we don't put this into a calculator and give a decimal, because if we give a decimal, that becomes an estimated or a rounded answer. It is no longer exact. So we're going to go ahead and just do some very quick algebra. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 8 on both sides of the equation. My 8's on the left side cancel out. I get just x squared on the left side is equal to 24 on the right side. Going ahead, and here is where those opposite operations come in handy. I have x squared, which is an operation acting on x, and the opposite of that, again, was the square root. So what I need to do is not divide on both sides, but actually square root both sides. And this is what helps me to cancel out the 2, the power of 2, and it gives me just x is equal to the square root of 24. But again, we needed to simplify this, and the square root of 24, I think we did this earlier, but regardless, let's do it one more time for practice. This is 4 and 6, simplifying 6 into 3 and 2, simplifying, factoring, I apologize, factoring 4 and 6 gives me these factors right here. I have a pair of 2's, and so my final answer will be 2 times the square root of these 2 factors multiplied together to give me 6. So my final answer is x is equal to 2 times the square root of 6. All right, so go ahead once more, pause the video here, see if you can give this one a try on your own. All right, go ahead and check over your answers once more. The first step is just regular algebra by adding 11 on both sides. But when we have this x squared, keep in mind again that the opposite operation is the square root to cancel that out. And then when I went ahead and simplified 44, I had one pair of 2's, and then I had a single 11 left over. So the 11 remains inside, and a singular 2 comes on out. All right, so that's it for simplifying square roots. Thank you so much for watching.